Hello, and welcome to our last segment of The State of Things, here with Blair Hassler. Blair, thanks for sticking it all the way to the end here. I wanted to wrap up the end of our conversation today with just talking about why everyone is so tense and feels like it is so difficult to get a hold on what's going on. I feel like that uncertainty among the media sources we're so used to trusting is a lot of the heartburn that is facing a lot of our electorate. What do you think?
I think that it's the media and also our political forces that be have found that it's much easier to direct us emotionally than any other way. And so they use a lot of arguments that, depending on where you stand on whatever issue, pull at the heartstrings. And so they get people so impassioned about an issue that you can't possibly identify with the person across from you. And you don't even see them as a human being anymore because they disagree with you on this one single issue.
Well, when you make your political position such a righteous cause that it is an act akin to heresy to disagree with you, then you treat people who disagree with you like heretics.
Correct.
You riot against them, commit violence against them.
You march.
As what I worry about in this day and age is that Trump is as much to blame in this. Well, actually, no, I don't think Trump is as much to blame in this as the media.
Symptom.
Well, no, Trump was always only going to be Trump. Trump doesn't know how to be anyone but Trump. Trump's going to talk like Trump. Trump is just going to be Trump.
He's a Trump bot.
I feel like if we know anything at this point, the one thing that we can say with absolute certainty is that Trump is going to be himself, and damn the consequences. But the thing is that I worry that the way the media has covered him, and we have expected that since time immemorial, political coverage has been pretty dry, pretty hard to get into, except for the nerds like me and you. Yeah. And
it's been a region of wants.
But it's been something that you can trust. You know, it's fact based. This happened. So and so said this. So and so was caught sleeping with so and so. The legislation passed. So and so got elected. So and so got voted out of office. You know, the stories of the day. But in this day and age, it's so difficult to know what is actually real because of the volume and tone of the media coverage of Trump. When you coverage every breath he takes as if he is, approaching the Maginot Line, then it's harder to trust when you're covering something where, wow, that is something I would like to critique Trump on. It's much harder to have that more reasoned discussion when the volume of the conversation on all sides is so turned up that it drowns out the ability to have a conversation.
Reasoned debate.
And I don't want to say reasoned debate like I'm getting all up on my high horse like no one else can do that. But I think anyone, regardless of your intelligence level, has something to contribute to political thought. And that's something I've always believed in. If you explain stuff to people in terms they can understand in layman's terms, people can understand most things. People aren't dumb. I've known plenty of people who haven't gone to college but started successful businesses like a waste management company or something like that.
Yeah.
And I've known plenty of people who've gone to college who are complete idiots. I'm sure you know plenty of those people as well. But to get back to the point, I think that kind of cultural condescension is something that a lot of the public is tired of having to put up with. When you talk about the uneducated.
Oh, I don't know that the public are tired of it. I think that they're affected by it. They're infected by it.
Well, no. What I mean by this is when you talk about the uneducated voter, the low information voter.
I'd rather call
the way
them
that
low
the way
information.
But you have to understand that to people, when people feel like you're talking about them as if they're the low information voter, you know what that sounds like. Look at this dumb idiot Rube who doesn't know, who didn't wake up this morning listening to NPR, so he knows all the right opinions to have about everything, so that we can smile and laugh at him at our dinner party.
So it's funny you mention that because the Hillary supporters were very upset by the Bernie bros using low information to categorize African Americans in the primary. And to each situation, I just say, you can be a low information voter, just don't know that that's you. Try to be educated to the best of your ability, and even if you end up being a low information voter, that's not, if you at least tried not to be that thing, if you didn't glorify that thing, if you don't really feel like that's you, you probably did a good enough job at understanding the issues to understand who you should vote for based on your positions.
Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you there.
That's fine. I was basically done.
Sorry, everyone. I have a bad habit, and I need to offer some mea culpas. But I do agree with you there that I think I don't want to glorify not choosing to spend more of your time figuring out what you believe politically, but I also want to say that I understand that since time immemorial, political parties have been used as shorthand for people who don't have the time to dig into every single policy idea.
Perhaps in our complex world, that we need something more than the two-party shorthand, and maybe this is how that happens. We often come to the conclusion that now is the conclusion, but this could be a step towards many different parties, because you see populist wings cropping up in both that don't seem to really jive with the major party figures, or it could be a step back towards what we've seen before. But I would say we're always moving in a direction. There's a velocity to what is happening, and right now the velocity to me feels like it's anti-two-party system, and with the broader globalization of business, there is somewhat of a globalization of politics, and most of the more successful democracies that we see in the world are based on multi-party systems. You have very few good two-party systems.
Well, my problem with the multi-party systems is that a lot of the countries that have the multi-party systems are making decisions on the international scale that are much less important than the international decisions that the U.S. makes. This is something I actually brought up in one of my first comparative politics class. My first fall semester at UF, was that as you increase the number of political parties in a country, it also makes it more difficult to come to a consensus in a time of emergency. That's one of those things that America has always been able to do very well, is respond exceedingly quickly to emerging global crisis. And I think there are a host of reasons why, and I do understand the desire for a third party. I actually think it would be more likely, if it were to ever happen, that it would be two third parties as opposed to one. I think one third party messes up the balance of power politically. It makes it too much of a powerful central entity that those two side parties would fight over. I think it's a more reasonable expectation, if we were going to see more parties, that we see both a new left party and a new right party.
Which is what you end up seeing in a lot of countries like Germany and stuff like that. You'll have the left wing, and then you'll have an extreme, that is like more almost a classical liberal with some social left sprinkled in there. And then you'll have the extreme left wing, and you'll have the right, something that's right, and then you'll have an extreme right, which their extreme right looks like our middle left, but that's another discussion.
Well, and as you change from a two-party to a multi-party system, the way you get legislation passed changes. Like the way you have to build consensus changes. So
have you been so sold on our system that you think we can't do better?
No, but I also am not so sold on everyone else's system that's closer to a parliamentary system,
right,
where you're building a group of parties, because you could have one, the most popular in the party in the country maybe represents 45% of political representation, but the other 55% is a host of other smaller parties that could then get together with 55% of that vote and run roughshod over that one larger party. I mean, there's just a whole host of different ways in which the power balance can shift in a political system like that America has never had to do. So I think if things
we would stub our toe. We certainly would.
If things change in America politically, change will come slowly and it will be iterative, not explosive. I would continue to think.
Well, is not Trump explosive?
Well, Trump's explosive, but I think we're talking about changes that are much bigger than
structural.
Yeah. We're talking about large structural changes that speak to about how we want to create legislation and create a whole host of other philosophical questions that I don't think we have time to get into here today. But as we cruise into home here, do you have any large bullet points that you would like to wrap up, or at least if you were to summarize from us here today? Clearly you have a passion for politics. If you were to summarize one or a couple of points that you would like to share with our audience, or people who are coming to their understanding or coming to their knowledge of politics and wanting to continue to develop it, what would you say to them?
I would say be dedicated to your points and your side, but in a rational way. Look for evidence-based arguments. Look for evidence-based decision-making to support it. Don't just go for the emotional thing that's right in front of you. Do what's right, do what's in front of you, but don't necessarily go for what's right in front of you, because that easy answer is typically a bias built into you, or built through teaching or through any other number of things, and it is wrong. To really understand the way to improve our processes is going to take an objective look at things. It's not going to take a lot of finger pointing. It's going to take a lot of devising and a lot of functional understanding of the way people and systems work. And so if you want to make a complaint about Trump, make it be factually based, make it be rooted in evidence, and make it be data builds a conclusion. And it will ring true and have so much more impact than the way that I feel like most liberals are now going after attacking Trump, which is in an ineffective way.
Well, I would certainly agree with you that if you want your arguments to be taken seriously, you have to make serious arguments. And when you stop making serious arguments, you stop being taken seriously. If I was to wrap up today's conversation in a bow, I would come back to the earlier point we made about critical thinking. I am just trying to show you guys how I equip myself with the tools of critical thinking and how I try to approach the world, to maybe give you a little bit of understanding into how to approach your own. But don't take it from me. I hope you get a host of different sources, and I hope this isn't the only one.
And peer review.
Yes, and peer review. I hope you listen to people who disagree with me vehemently and come to your conclusions independently. That's what this show will always be about. No one owns me or my opinion, and I will do the best to make sure that no one owns the opinion of people coming on. Thank you very much for joining us today. This has been a discussion of Trump, but if I was to make one last point, it is that things are never as good and never as bad as they seem. You may worry that the world is coming to an end and women will forever have to go back into the kitchen, and gays will forever have to go back into the closet, and African Americans will forever have to go back to the back of the bus. But if you have faith, I can promise you that at the end of the next 4 or 8 years, you will still be alive. The world will still be the confusing, sometimes crappy, sometimes awesome place that it is, that we all have to try and figure out each day. If I made it through 8 years of the Obama administration, anyone can survive anything. But I'd like to thank you for joining me once again, and I hope to see you next time. Like and subscribe below